The Forgotten Guardians. The discovery on Kepler 442b. Dr. Zara Thex pressed her scaled palm against the cool metal of the ancient door. The Kralix archaeologist had spent 3 years excavating this site, but nothing had prepared her for what lay beyond this threshold. The door was made from a material that her scanners couldn't identify, smooth as glass yet stronger than any known alloy. "Professor Thex, we're detecting massive energy signatures behind that barrier," called out her assistant, a young Kralix named Jorik. His reptilian features showed the excitement that all archaeologists felt when facing the unknown. The planet Kepler 442b had been dead for over 5,000 years. No life, no civilization, just empty cities and crumbling monuments. The Galactic Archaeological Council had sent dozens of teams here, but Zara's team was the first to find something truly significant. "Stand back, everyone," Zara commanded as she input the sequence of symbols they had discovered earlier. The door responded with a soft hum, then slid open with perfect silence. The chamber beyond took their breath away. It was vast, stretching further than their lights could reach. But what dominated the space was a single massive holographic display, still active after millennia of abandonment. The hologram showed a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy, with thousands of star systems marked in different colors. "By the ancient gods," whispered Jorik, "this technology is impossible. Our best scientists can barely maintain holograms for a few hours, but this has been running for thousands of years." Zara approached the display carefully. As she got closer, she could see that the markings weren't random. They were a record of every known species in the galaxy, with detailed information about their homeworlds, their level of technological development, and their population numbers. But there was something else. In the center of the display, where the Sol system should be, was a notation in a language Zara had never seen before. The symbols were elegant and flowing, unlike the harsh angular writing of the Kralix or the geometric patterns of the Vorthak. "Professor, look at this." Jorik had found another section of the room. The walls were covered with images carved into the strange metal. The images showed beings that looked remarkably similar to several galactic species, but with subtle differences. They were taller than the Kralix, with smoother skin and longer limbs. They had no scales, no chitinous plates, no crystal formations. They looked almost soft. "What species is this?" Jorik asked. "I've never seen anything like them in the galactic databases." Zara was studying the carvings more closely. "These aren't just any species, Jorik. Look at the context. These beings are shown alongside representatives from every major galactic civilization. They're not just observers, they're leaders. They're making decisions that affect the entire galaxy." The implications were staggering. If these carvings were accurate, then there had once been a species that served as peacekeepers and protectors for the entire galaxy. A species that had somehow been completely erased from galactic history. The Devourer Plague 3 months after the discovery on Kepler 442b, the galaxy faced its greatest threat in recorded history. The Devourer Plague had begun in the Outer Rim, consuming entire star systems with a hunger that seemed endless. Fleet Commander Vex Morlach stood on the bridge of the Kralix flagship Talon of Justice, watching in horror as the 4th planet Indi, the Rigel system, simply vanished. Not destroyed, not broken apart, it was consumed completely, leaving nothing but empty space where a world had once existed. "Sir, we're receiving distress calls from 17 different systems," reported communications. "Officer Plek, the Devourer swarms are moving faster than our evacuation fleets." Vex clenched his clawed hands. The Kralix Empire had the strongest military in the galaxy, but they were powerless against this threat. The Devourers weren't just destroying planets. They were consuming the very fabric of space itself, leaving behind voids that nothing could cross. "Any word from the Vorthak science ships?" Vex asked. "They're still analyzing the Devourer technology, sir, but their preliminary reports are disturbing. The Devourers aren't using any known physics. They're operating on principles that our science says should be impossible." Vex had seen the reports. The Devourers were creatures of pure energy wrapped in some kind of exotic matter shell. They could phase through solid objects, manipulate gravity, and worst of all, they seemed to be learning and adapting with each system they consumed. "Sir," Plek's voice was urgent. "We're detecting unknown energy signatures at the edge of the system. Multiple contacts approaching fast." Vex looked at the tactical display. 3 ships were approaching from the direction of empty space, but they weren't like anything in the Galactic database. They were smooth and streamlined, with no visible weapons or engines. They moved with a grace that suggested advanced technology far beyond anything the galaxy had seen. "Hail them," Vex ordered. "No response, sir. They're maintaining complete communication silence." The 3 unknown ships took position between the Kralix fleet and the approaching Devourer swarm. For a moment, nothing happened. Then space itself seemed to bend around the unknown vessels. What followed was the most incredible display of firepower Vex had ever witnessed. The unknown ships fired beams of pure white energy that cut through the Devourer swarms like light through darkness. Where the beams touched, the Devourers simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not scattered. They were completely unmade. In less than 10 minutes, the entire Devourer swarm was eliminated. The 3 ships reformed their formation and then, as mysteriously as they had appeared, they vanished into the void. The ancient language Dr. Zara Thex was summoned to the Kralix High Command within hours of the mysterious ship's appearance. The military leaders wanted answers, and they believed her archaeological discoveries held the key. "The energy signatures match," she explained to the assembled admirals and generals. "The power readings from those ships are identical to the technology we found on Kepler 442b. The beings who built that archive are still alive." General Korth, the most senior military officer in the Kralix Empire, leaned forward. "You're saying these mystery ships belong to the same species that created those ruins?" "I'm certain of it," Zara replied, "but there's more. I've been analyzing the language symbols we found, and I think I've made a breakthrough. The writing isn't just a record-keeping system. It's a communication protocol. I believe we can use it to make contact." The room fell silent. For months, the galaxy had been defenseless against the Devourer plague. Now suddenly there was hope. "What do you need?" General Korth asked. "Permission to broadcast a message using the ancient language. If I'm right, they'll respond. If I'm wrong..." Zara paused. "Well, we're no worse off than we were before." The decision was made quickly. Within hours, every major communications array in the galaxy was broadcasting Zara's message. It was simple, transmitted in the flowing script they had found on Kepler 442b. "Ancient Guardians, your children remember. The galaxy needs your protection once more." The response came faster than anyone expected. It wasn't a verbal message or even a text transmission. Instead, it was a set of coordinates and a single word in the ancient language that Zara translated as, "Come, the meeting." The coordinates led to a system that didn't appear on any galactic map. It was located in what the star charts showed as empty space. But when the Kralix exploration fleet arrived, they found something impossible. A massive space station hung in the void, larger than any structure ever built by known galactic civilizations. It was beautiful in its simplicity, with smooth curves and flowing lines that seemed to pulse with internal light. Around it, dozens of the mysterious ships moved in perfect formation. "This is Fleet Commander Vex Morlach of the Kralix Empire," Vex broadcast on all frequencies. "We come in peace, seeking alliance against the Devourer threat." The response came immediately, and it was in perfect Kralix. "Welcome, descendants of the galaxy we once protected. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Fleet. We have been waiting for this moment for a very long time." The revelation, the meeting took place aboard the Terran station, in a chamber that defied every law of physics the Kralix knew. The gravity was perfect, the air was breathable by all species, and the walls seemed to show views of distant stars that shouldn't have been visible from their location. Captain Sarah Chen was the first human most of the galactic representatives had ever seen. She was tall and graceful, with smooth skin and kind eyes that held the weight of millennia. Behind her stood other humans, each one radiating the quiet confidence of beings who had mastered forces beyond galactic understanding. "You're the species. From the ruins," Dr. Zarathek said, her voice filled with wonder. "You're the Terrans, but the records say you went extinct 5,000 years ago." Sarah smiled, and it was the expression filled with both sadness and hope. "We didn't go extinct, Dr. Thex. We went into exile. We left the galaxy to prepare for a threat we knew was coming." "The Devourers," Fleet Commander Vex realized. "Yes, our scientists detected their approach from intergalactic space over 5,000 years ago. We knew that the galaxy, as it existed then, couldn't survive their invasion, so we made the hardest choice in human history. We abandoned our friends and allies to become strong enough to save them. General Korth's reptilian features showed confusion. But why not warn us? Why not help us prepare?" Sarah's expression grew sad. "Because preparation without the right technology would have been futile. The Devourers adapt to whatever they encounter. If we had tried to fight them with conventional weapons, they would have learned to counter everything we had. We needed to develop completely new forms of technology, based on principles they had never encountered." She gestured to the walls, around them. "What you see here is the result of 5,000 years of focused development. We've learned to manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself. We can unmake matter, bend space, and even touch the quantum foam that underlies existence." Dr. Zarathex looked around the chamber with new understanding. "That's why your technology seems impossible to us. You're not just more advanced. You're operating on completely different scientific principles." "Exactly," Sarah confirmed. "And now we're ready to teach those principles to our galactic family. The Devourers are just the beginning. There are worse threats in the void between galaxies, and we'll need to face them together. The choice." The revelation that humanity had never truly disappeared sent shockwaves through the galactic community. Some species felt betrayed, angry that humans had abandoned them to face millennia of conflict alone. Others were grateful, understanding, that humanity's exile had been necessary for their eventual salvation. The debate raged for days in the emergency Galactic Council session. Representatives from dozens of species argued about whether to accept human help or reject it out of pride. It was Dr. Zarathex who finally spoke the words that changed everything. "We can debate the ethics of their choice later," she said. "Right. Now we have a simple question to answer. Do we want to survive?" The vote was unanimous. Every species in the galaxy chose survival over pride. Captain Sarah Chen stood before the assembled representatives, her voice carrying across the chamber with quiet authority. "Then we begin immediately. We'll establish training centers on every major world. We'll teach your scientists our principles of reality manipulation. We'll share our technology and our knowledge freely. But," she continued, "we ask for something in return. When this crisis is over, when the Devourers are defeated, we want to rejoin the galactic community not as rulers, but as equals. We want to be your partners in building a future that no threat can destroy." The chamber erupted in cheers from a dozen different species. For the first time in months, the galaxy had hope. The return of Earth's children, the new alliance. 6 months. After first contact with the Terran Defense Fleet, the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. Human training centers had been established on every major world, where alien scientists learned to manipulate quantum fields and bend the laws of physics to their will. Dr. Zarathex stood in the primary laboratory on Kralix Prime, watching as her assistant Jorik successfully created a stable gravitational field with nothing but his bare hands and a small device that looked like crystallized starlight. "I still can't believe this is real," Jorik said, his scaled features showing wonder, as he watched matter dance around his fingers. 6 months ago, we thought the laws of physics were fixed. Now we're rewriting them." The transformation hadn't been easy. Human technology required a fundamental shift in thinking that challenged everything the galaxy thought it knew about science. Some species adapted quickly, while others struggled with concepts that seemed to contradict their basic understanding of reality. The Vorthak are having the most success, Zara observed, referencing the crystalline beings whose natural quantum entanglement made them ideal candidates for advanced human techniques. But the Helix Confederacy is still struggling with the consciousness-matter interaction principles. It's understandable, came a familiar voice from behind them. Captain Sarah Chen entered the laboratory, her presence immediately commanding. Attention. Your species developed science based on observation and measurement. Our science is based on participation and will. It's a completely different paradigm. Sarah had been spending most of her time traveling between worlds, personally, overseeing the training programs. She had a gift for explaining complex concepts in ways that different species could understand, adapting her teaching methods to suit each race's unique cognitive patterns. How are the other programs progressing? Zara asked. Better than expected, Sarah replied with a smile. The Zephyrian Flight Corps has mastered spatial folding techniques that let them travel between star systems in minutes instead of days. The Kralix military has learned to create shield matrices that can protect entire planets. And the Aquarian Collective has developed underwater cities that exist partially outside normal spacetime. It was remarkable progress, but Zara could see the concern in Sarah's eyes. The Devourers are adapting too, aren't they? Sarah nodded grimly. Each time we defeat one of their swarms, the survivors carry that knowledge back to the main force. They're learning our techniques almost as fast as we can teach them to our allies. The Resistance. Not everyone in the galaxy welcomed humanity's return. On the industrial world of Farron 7, a group calling themselves the Pure Galaxy Movement had gained significant support among those who believed the galaxy should solve its own problems without human interference. Commander Drac Ironscale, a veteran of the Farron military, stood before a crowd of thousands in the planet's main square. His voice carried the authority of someone who had fought in dozens of battles. They call themselves our saviors, Drac declared, his voice echoing across the plaza. But where were they when the Helix Wars devastated the Outer Rim? Where were they when the Plague of Shadows consumed the Andromeda colonies? They watched from their hidden strongholds while our people died. The crowd roared its approval. Many of those present had lost family members in conflicts that had raged while humanity remained in exile. The pain of abandonment ran deep. Now, they return with their impossible technology and their promises of protection, Drac continued. But at what cost? We're becoming dependent on their science, their methods, their way of thinking. Are we saving the galaxy, or are we becoming slaves to human superiority? The movement was growing, spreading to other worlds where similar sentiments existed. Some species had always prided themselves on their independence, and the idea of accepting help from the very beings who had abandoned them was difficult to accept. News of the resistance reached the Terran leadership quickly. In the command center of the orbital station, Captain Sarah Chen met with her senior staff to discuss the situation. We knew this would happen, said Dr. Elena Vasquez, the fleet's chief psychologist. 5,000 years of abandonment doesn't heal overnight. Some species need someone to blame, and we're the obvious target. The question is how we respond, added Commander James Park, the military advisor. We could demonstrate our power, show them what happens to worlds that reject our protection. But that would only confirm their worst fears about us. Sarah shook her head. We don't rule through fear. We never have, and we never will. If some species choose to reject our help, that's their right. We'll protect them anyway, from the shadows if necessary. Even if it means more of our people die? Commander Park asked. Especially then, Sarah replied firmly. We didn't return to the galaxy to become conquerors. We came back to be the guardians we always were. The Devourer evolution. The situation became critical when the Devourers unveiled their newest adaptation. The creatures had learned to mimic human technology, creating dark mirrors of Terran quantum manipulation techniques. The first sign came from the Rigel system, where a joint human-alien defense force was protecting the evacuation of the last inhabited planet. The Devourer swarm that attacked them wasn't like the previous ones. These creatures could phase through Terran energy shields, manipulate gravity wells, and even create their own spatial folds. Lieutenant Commander Alex Rivera, one of the youngest humans to achieve full reality manipulation certification, watched in horror as his carefully constructed quantum barriers were torn apart by creatures that shouldn't have been able to understand such advanced concepts. "They're using our own techniques against us," he reported to Captain Chen, "but they're doing it wrong, like they're copying the effects without understanding the underlying principles." "That might be our advantage," Sarah realized. "Show me." The battle recordings. The footage was disturbing. The Devourers had indeed learned to mimic human abilities, but their techniques were crude and destructive. Where human quantum manipulation was precise and controlled, the Devourer versions were chaotic and wasteful. "They're like children playing with weapons they don't understand," Dr. Vasquez observed. "They can create the effects, but they can't control them properly." "Which makes them even more dangerous," Sarah concluded. "An unskilled user of quantum manipulation can tear holes in reality itself." The implications were terrifying. If the Devourers continued to develop their stolen abilities without proper understanding, they could destabilize the quantum foundations of the galaxy itself. The Unity Protocol. The crisis forced the galaxy to make a choice. Species that had been reluctant to accept human help were suddenly faced with the reality that partial cooperation wasn't enough. Either they fully embraced the new technologies, or they would be consumed by enemies who had done the same. Even Commander Drac Ironscale, leader of the Pure Galaxy movement, was forced to acknowledge the situation when Farron 7 came under attack by evolved Devourers. His conventional weapons were useless against creatures that could phase through matter and manipulate local gravity. "This is Commander Ironscale to any Terran vessels in the area," he broadcast as his defenses crumbled around him. We need assistance." The response came from Captain Chen herself, leading a strike force of combined human and alien ships. "On our way, Commander. Hold your position." The battle for Farron 7 became a turning point in galactic history. Human ships worked alongside alien vessels that had been retrofitted with quantum manipulation technology. Kralix fighters folded space around enemy formations, while Vorthak crystals created reality anchors that prevented the Devourers from phasing away. Most importantly, the Defenders fought as one force, not as separate species working together. The quantum techniques required perfect coordination between different types of consciousness, creating a mental link between human and alien minds that transcended traditional barriers. "I can feel them," Jorik reported from his position aboard, a Kralix destroyer. "The human thoughts, the Vorthak crystal songs, even the Aquarian dream patterns. We're all connected." It was exactly what humanity had hoped for when they first developed their advanced techniques. The quantum manipulation abilities didn't just change technology, they created bonds between minds that made true cooperation possible. The final battle. The decisive confrontation came when long-range sensors detected the Devourer mothership, a massive entity that dwarfed anything previously encountered. It was approaching from the galactic core, consuming star systems as it moved and growing, larger with each world it devoured. "It's the size of a small moon," reported the Vorthak sensor specialist aboard the flagship, "and it's generating quantum disturbances that are affecting space-time throughout the galaxy." The combined fleet that assembled to face this threat was unlike anything in galactic history. Over 10,000 ships from dozens of species, all equipped with human-derived quantum manipulation technology and crewed by beings who had learned to think beyond the limitations of traditional physics. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the flagship Terran Unity, looking out at the greatest armada ever assembled. But she wasn't thinking about the ships or the weapons. She was thinking about the bonds that connected every mind in the fleet. "All ships, this is Captain Chen," she broadcast. "Today we fight not as humans or Kralix or Vorthak, but as children of the galaxy. Today we prove that unity is stronger than hunger, that cooperation is more powerful than consumption." The battle began when the Devourer mothership detected the approaching fleet and unleashed swarms of smaller entities. But these weren't the crude mimics they had faced before. These Devourers had perfected their stolen techniques, creating attacks that bent reality around the defending ships. "Quantum torpedoes are having no effect," reported Commander Park. "They're creating reality bubbles that make our weapons pass through empty space." Then we don't fight them with weapons, Sarah decided. All ships implement Unity Protocol. Link your quantum fields with the ship next to you. What followed was the most ambitious use of quantum manipulation ever attempted. 10,000 ships, crewed by dozens of different species, created a single, massive quantum field that encompassed the entire battlefield. Within that field, the laws of physics were whatever the United Fleet wanted them to be. The Devourers found themselves facing an enemy that could rewrite reality faster than they could adapt. When they tried to phase through matter, the matter became solid. When they tried to manipulate gravity, gravity ceased to exist in their local area. When they tried to consume energy, the energy transformed into pure thought that they couldn't digest. But the real victory came when the fleet reached the mothership itself. Instead of trying to destroy it, they did something the Devourers couldn't have anticipated. They transformed it. Using their combined will and the Unity Protocol, the fleet reached into the quantum structure of the mothership and changed its fundamental nature. The hunger that drove it was replaced with curiosity. The consumption that defined it was replaced with creation. The former Devourer mothership stopped its advance and began to glow with soft, warm light. When it spoke, its voice was heard in the minds of every being in the fleet. "I remember," it said. "I remember what I was before the hunger. I remember purpose beyond consumption." The new galaxy in the aftermath of the victory, the galaxy underwent changes that no one had anticipated. The Unity Protocol, originally developed as a weapon against the Devourers, became the foundation for a new form of civilization. Species that had been enemies for millennia found themselves connected by quantum bonds that made deception and betrayal nearly impossible. The Kralix and the Helix Confederacy, who had fought 3 wars over territorial disputes, discovered that their conflicts had been based on misunderstandings that couldn't survive the clarity of shared consciousness. "It's not mind control," Dr. Zarathex explained to the Galactic Council. "It's more like enhanced empathy. When you can feel another being's emotions and understand their motivations, it becomes very difficult to hate them." The former Devourer mothership, now calling itself the Seeker, became the first of a new type of entity in the galaxy. Part biological, part technological, part consciousness. It traveled between star systems, helping to establish the quantum networks that connected all inhabited worlds. "We were wrong about the Devourers," Sarah Chen admitted during a council session. "They weren't evil, they were hungry. They had forgotten how to create, so they could only consume. By helping them remember their original purpose, we didn't destroy them, we healed them." The transformation wasn't without challenges. Some beings found the constant connection to other minds overwhelming and chose to live in areas where the quantum networks were weaker. Others worried about losing their individual identity in the collective consciousness. But for most of the galaxy, the new unity represented hope for a future that had seemed impossible just months before. Wars became obsolete when potential enemies could understand each other's perspectives. Poverty disappeared when resources could be shared based on need rather than political power. Scientific advancement accelerated as researchers from different species could literally share thoughts and insights. The Guardians return 1 year after the defeat of the Devourer threat. Humanity formally rejoined the galactic community, but they didn't return as the advanced species offering salvation to primitive aliens. Instead, they took their place as equal partners in a civilization that had grown beyond anything that had existed before. The ceremony took place on the same space station where first contact had occurred, but the station itself had been transformed by quantum manipulation into something that defied description. It existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, with gardens that grew in zero gravity and libraries that contained not just books, but crystallized experiences from thousands of worlds. Captain Sarah Chen, now bearing the title of Guardian rather than military commander, stood before representatives from every species in the galaxy. The formal reinstatement of humanity was more than just a political ceremony. It was a celebration of what the galaxy had become. "We return not as the humans who left 5,000 years ago," Sarah declared. "We return as beings who have learned that isolation makes us weak, while unity makes us strong." We have seen what we can accomplish when we work together, and we pledge to never again let fear drive us apart." The response came not in words, but in a wave of shared emotion that flowed through the quantum networks connecting every mind in the galaxy. Joy, hope, determination, and above all, the unshakable conviction that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Dr. Zarathex, now serving as the galaxy's chief archaeologist and historian, made the final entry in her record of the events. Today marks not just the return of humanity, but the birth of something new. We are no longer separate species competing for resources and territory. We are one consciousness, one will, one family. The age of division is over. The age of unity has begun. In the depths of space, other threats stirred in the void between galaxies. But for the first time in galactic history, they would find not scattered, competing civilizations to consume, but a united force capable of rewriting the very laws of reality itself. The galaxy had its guardians back, and they would never leave again.